We live in a world that is addicted to motion. Everything around us says the same thing. Do more, produce more, optimize more, hustle more. Rest is rebranded as recovery, something you earn after sufficient output. Silence is filled with podcasts. Walks become exercise. Vacations become opportunities to catch up on reading. Even doing nothing has been turned into a productivity technique, and yet something in us knows this is wrong. We have all felt it. The particular exhaustion that comes not from physical effort, but from the constant, relentless pressure to be in motion. The fatigue of a life in which stillness has been categorized as failure. What if that pressure is not wisdom? What if the most powerful thing you can do in certain moments, perhaps in many moments, is nothing at all? This is not a new idea. It is in fact one of the oldest. The Stoics, those hardened, battle-tested philosophers of ancient Rome, understood something about stillness and strategic inaction that most modern productivity culture has completely missed. Welcome to Master Your Mind, the place where ancient philosophy becomes practical mental strength. Today we are going deep into one of the most counterintuitive and most powerful principles in all of Stoic philosophy, the power of doing nothing. By the end of this video, you will have a completely different relationship with stillness, with silence, and with the moments in your life when the wisest action is to wait. Let us begin. Before we can understand the Stoic teaching on stillness, we need to honestly examine the world we are operating in. We live inside a cultural system that has made busyness a virtue, not competence. Busyness, not wisdom, activity. The person who is constantly occupied, constantly responding, constantly producing, is held up as the ideal. The person who sits quietly and thinks is viewed with suspicion. What are they not doing? What are they avoiding? This is not accidental. It is structural. The digital systems we use daily are engineered, with extraordinary precision, to keep our attention perpetually captured. Every notification, every scroll, every refresh is designed to prevent exactly one thing: stillness. And we have internalized this so completely that the discomfort we feel when we stop is no longer just environmental. It has become neurological. Many people cannot sit in silence for 5 minutes without reaching for their phone. Not because they need something, simply because stillness has become unfamiliar enough to feel dangerous. Marcus Aurelius observed this pattern in his own world, the Roman court, which was hardly quieter or simpler than ours. He wrote in his private journals about the way the noise of the world enters the mind and crowds out the capacity for clear thought. And yet Marcus returned, again and again, to the same practice. Withdrawal, not from his duties, he never shirked those, but withdrawal into the interior space where clear thought was possible. He called this the retreat into himself, and he treated it not as a luxury, but as the foundation of everything he did well. The question is not whether the world will demand your constant motion. It will. The world has always done this, and will continue to. The question is whether you will comply reflexively, or whether you will choose with intention when to move and when to be still. That choice is one of the most powerful expressions of freedom available to a human being, and the Stoics understood this with a clarity that we are only beginning to recover. The Latin word is otium. It translates roughly as leisure, but that translation is deeply inadequate. In modern English, leisure suggests recreation, entertainment, relaxation, the absence of work. Otium meant something far more profound. For the Stoics, otium was the state in which the highest human faculties, reason, reflection, philosophical inquiry, could operate without interference. Seneca wrote an entire essay on this subject. He argued that deliberate withdrawal from the demands of daily life was not a betrayal of your responsibilities, but their highest expression. A person who retreats to think clearly, he argued, serves the world more through the quality of their thought than through the quantity of their activity. You can be in constant motion and accomplish nothing of real value. You can also be entirely still, and in that stillness, do the most important work of your life. Think about the moments in your own experience when you have arrived at an important insight, made a genuinely good decision, or understood something clearly for the first time. Were you in the middle of a meeting? Were you responding to messages? Were you rushing between commitments? Almost certainly not. Almost certainly, the insight came in a quiet moment, in the shower, on a walk, in the minutes before sleep. This is not coincidence. This is the natural function of a mind, given adequate space to operate. Epictetus spoke of the discipline of desire, the practice of learning which things are worth wanting, and which should simply be let go. This discipline, he taught, cannot be practiced at speed. It requires stillness. It requires the kind of unhurried self-examination that only happens when you are not reacting to an external demand. Otium is not laziness. Otium is the deliberate creation of the conditions in which wisdom becomes possible. And in a world that actively prevents those conditions from forming, the cultivation of otium is itself an act of philosophical courage. No principle in Stoic philosophy is more central than this one. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. Our own judgments, desires, aversions, and responses, these are within our control. Everything else, the opinions of others, the outcomes of our efforts, the behavior of the world around us, is not. This is not fatalism. It is a precise and accurate description of reality. When we act as though we can control outcomes by sheer force of effort and will, we exhaust ourselves on things that were never within our power to begin with. We push harder. We intervene more frequently. We refuse to stop, because stopping feels like losing, and losing feels unbearable, and in doing so, we often destroy the very thing we were trying to preserve. This pattern is visible everywhere, once you learn to see it. The manager who cannot let a project breathe, who intervenes at every stage, and whose team, unable to develop confidence, eventually stops trying. The relationship in which one person pushes so hard for a particular outcome that the other person retreats. The creative work that dies under the weight of too much forced effort and not enough space. Marcus Aurelius had learned. And it was a learning, not a natural tendency to act decisively when action was required, and then release his grip on the outcome. He had governed one of the most complex political organisms in human history. He was not a man of inaction, but he understood that there is a category of things, large, important, consequential things, that respond not to more force but to less. The Stoics called this the reserve clause. Before undertaking any significant action, the wise person adds, internally a qualification: I will do this if nothing prevents it. This is not pessimism. It is the acknowledgement that the universe does not consult our plans. It is the practice of doing your full effort with a genuinely open hand. Consider how differently you move through a project when you are gripping it versus when you are holding it lightly. Gripping produces rigidity. It makes you defensive, unable to adapt, exhausted. Holding lightly produces flexibility. It allows you to respond to what is actually happening, rather than what you insist should be happening. Sometimes, the most powerful intervention available to you is to stop intervening, to do nothing, and allow the situation to develop according to its own logic. Not because you don't care about the outcome, but because you understand with Stoic clarity that forcing it is costing you more than it is gaining you. Seneca wrote, "Silence is the friend of those who are wise and the enemy of those who are empty." We tend to fill silence in conversations, in our own minds, in the spaces between activities, because silence feels like absence, like something missing, like a gap that needs to be bridged. And so we fill it with words, with noise, with activity. We mistake the filling of silence for the production of value, but silence is not empty. It is full of information, full of possibility, full of the kind of clarity that noise inevitably obscures. A person who can be silent, genuinely, comfortably, without compulsion to fill the space, has access to something that most people around them cannot reach. In conversation, the person who rushes to fill every pause, who responds before the other person has finished thinking, this person is operating at a fraction of their capacity. They are responding to the surface of what is being said, rather than its substance. The person who can wait, who can hold the silence after something has been said and let it breathe, understands more. They hear what was said and what was not said. They notice the difference between the stated question and the real question. They allow the other person to go deeper than they would have if the space had been immediately filled. Epictetus was blunt about this. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them in that proportion. This is not an instruction about politeness. It is an instruction about how we actually learn anything real about the world and the people in it. Internally, the same principle applies with even greater force. Most people's inner world is deafeningly loud. The continuous commentary, the rehearsal of conversations, the planning of futures that will not arrive as planned. This noise is not neutral. It consumes the cognitive resources that would otherwise be available for clear perception and wise judgment. The practice of interior silence is not a spiritual luxury. It is a cognitive necessity. It is the means by which you access your own best thinking, and it is something that almost no one in the modern world practices consistently. Which means that the person who does is operating with a profound advantage. Marcus Aurelius came back to this practice constantly in his meditations. He wrote about returning, again and again, to the simplest possible question: what is actually happening right now? Not what might happen. Not what I fear will happen. What is actually happening? This question, asked in genuine stillness, cuts through enormous amounts of mental noise and leaves you with something rare and valuable: reality as it actually is. There is a particular kind of mistake that only very busy, very competent people make. It is the mistake of acting when the correct response was to wait. These are people who have built their identities around their capacity for decisive action. When a problem appears, they move toward it. When a question is raised, they answer it. When a crisis emerges, they are the first to mobilize. This capacity is genuinely valuable. The problem is when it becomes reflexive, when action becomes the automatic response to everything, regardless of whether action is what the situation actually requires. A disciplined action, in the Stoic sense, is one that has been considered, that aligns with reason and virtue, and that is calibrated to what the situation actually needs. A reactive action is one that is simply the path of least psychological resistance, doing something because the discomfort of inaction is greater than the discomfort of doing the wrong thing. Many of the worst decisions in human history have been made this way, not from malice or incompetence, but from the inability to tolerate the uncertainty that comes with waiting. Seneca identified anger as one of the primary generators of reactive, premature action. An angry person acts immediately. They respond before they have thought, confront before they have understood, decide before they have considered, and almost always the action taken in anger is one they will regret. His prescription was the sacred pause. Before acting in anger, before sending the message, before making the decision that cannot be unmade, wait, not forever. Simply wait long enough for the acute heat of the emotion to subside and the faculties of reason to re-engage. This is not passivity. This is the most disciplined form of action. The action of choosing, intentionally, not to act yet. It requires more self-control than any physical exertion, and it consistently produces better outcomes. In nature, this principle is everywhere. The predator that moves too soon gives itself away and loses the hunt. The tree that pushes growth in winter dies. The fruit that is picked before it is ripe is sour. There is a timing to things, a natural ripeness that forcing consistently disrupts and patience consistently serves. Epictetus put it this way: never say of anything I have lost it, but rather I have returned it. This principle of holding things without clinging, of acting without forcing, is the heart of Stoic inaction. It is the recognition that the world has its own timing, and that the wisest thing you can do in many circumstances is align yourself with that timing rather than fight it. Ask yourself, honestly, how many of the most costly mistakes in your life were made because you acted too quickly? How many situations that you struggled to control would have resolved themselves, or resolved better, if you had simply waited? The discipline of strategic inaction is not a passive discipline. It is an extraordinarily active one. It requires you to override some of your strongest instincts, to sit with discomfort rather than escape it through action. To trust that waiting is not losing, that stillness is not weakness, that some of the most important things you will ever do will not involve doing anything at all. We have been talking about stillness as a strategic tool, as a means to better outcomes, wiser decisions, more effective action, and it is all of those things. But there is something more fundamental happening when you practice genuine stillness, something that goes beyond strategy. Stillness restores you to yourself. Consider what happens to your sense of self in a life of continuous motion and reaction. You are shaped, almost entirely, by the demands and opinions of the external world. Your identity becomes a composite of other people's expectations, other people's urgencies, other people's definitions of what is important. You lose gradually and often without noticing the thread back to your own values, your own perception, your own sense of what you actually want and who you actually are. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this erosion with a personal urgency that is unmistakable in his journals. He was the most powerful man in the Western world, and he was profoundly aware of how that power, and the constant demands that came with it, threatened to dissolve the interior person he was working to be. He wrote, "Go inside yourself as often as you need to, and inside, expect to find something worth finding." This is one of the most radical statements in all of Stoic philosophy. The expectation that the interior self discovered in stillness, beneath the noise of the world, is something worth finding, that it is not empty, not frightening, not deficient, that it is, in fact, the source of everything that makes a life worth living. Most people are afraid of stillness. precisely because they do not believe this. They have been told explicitly or implicitly that their value is located in their productivity, their performance, their usefulness to others, and so the prospect of stopping, of encountering themselves without the armor of activity, feels like facing something they might not want to see. The Stoics would say, this fear is itself the symptom of the problem, and it is precisely what the practice of stillness heals. Seneca wrote, Dum differtur vita transcurrit. While we delay, life passes. But the full context of this statement is important. He was not urging more action, he was urging a different quality of presence, the kind of presence that is only available when you stop running long enough to actually inhabit the life you are living. There is a particular quality of aliveness that is only accessible in stillness. The sharpness of perception that comes when the mind is not consumed by its own noise, the sense of genuine presence, here, now, in this moment, that is systematically impossible when you are always either reliving the past or planning the future. The Stoics called this the present moment practice. The return, again and again, to what is actually happening right now, not as an escape from responsibility, but as the only actual location of experience. The past is memory, the future is imagination, the present is all there is. This is what genuine stillness restores. Not just efficiency or clarity, or better decisions, though it produces all of those. It restores your access to the only life you actually have, the one that is happening right now. Everything we have discussed until now is philosophical. Let us make it practical. The Stoics were not theorists. They were deeply skeptical of philosophical ideas that could not be lived, that were beautiful in the abstract but useless in the actual fabric of a day. The first practice is what Marcus Aurelius called the morning examination. Before the day begins, before the phone is checked, before the obligations crowd in, you take 5 minutes of genuine silence. You ask yourself, simply, what matters today? Not what is on the calendar, not what other people are expecting. What actually matters, by your own deepest values. This is a short practice. 5 minutes is not a significant portion of a day, but the act of asking that question from a place of stillness before the day has imposed its own answer is transformative. It means that when you move into action, you are moving from your own center, rather than being swept along by the current of other people's urgencies. The second practice is the strategic pause before response. Before you respond to anything significant, you pause. The pause is not a delay for its own sake. It is the space in which your best judgment, rather than your first reaction, can form. Seneca recommended that when you feel anger beginning to rise, you physically slow your breathing and count your words before speaking. What Seneca recommended from philosophical intuition, modern neuroscience confirms. Deliberate slowing of physical response allows the rational faculties to re-engage. The pause is not a weakness, it is a technology. The third practice is scheduled otium. Not rest as recovery, but deliberate, unstructured time that belongs only to your own reflection. An hour in the week that is not assigned to any output, that has no goal except the quality of your own thinking, that you protect with the same seriousness that you protect your most important meetings. This practice will feel deeply uncomfortable at first. The mind trained for productivity will search for a task. Let it search. Do not give it anything. Sit with the discomfort of not producing, and notice what happens on the other side of that discomfort. Almost always something arises, a perception, a connection, an insight that would never have come if you had filled the time with effort. The fourth practice is the deliberate reduction of unnecessary speech. For one period of your day, even 30 minutes, commit to speaking only when it is genuinely necessary. Every unnecessary word is an energy expenditure. Every withheld unnecessary word is a small act of self-mastery. Over time, this develops in you the quality the Stoics most admired in speech, the ability to say what needs to be said, with precision and weight, and nothing more. The fifth practice, and the most challenging, is releasing outcomes. For each significant project or relationship in your life, identify the thing you are gripping most tightly and deliberately practice holding it more lightly. This does not mean caring less. It means the Stoic distinction between giving your full effort and demanding a specific result. You bring everything you have, and then you release your demand on what happens next. These 5 practices are not advanced. They do not require equipment or extensive time. They require only the kind of intentionality that comes from understanding what you are doing and why. Before we bring this video to a close, I want to pause here for a moment because what comes next is in many ways the piece that ties everything together. We have traveled a great deal of ground today. The philosophy of Stoic stillness, the concept of otium, The dichotomy of control. Strategic inaction. The restoration of the self. 5 concrete practices you can begin using immediately. And now I want to go one level deeper into the insight that makes all of those not just techniques but a way of being. This is the bonus I promised you at the beginning. And it is the most important thing I will say today. Everything we have discussed until now has treated stillness as something you do, a practice you engage in, a behavior you choose. And at the beginning that framing is useful. It gives you something concrete to work with. But the Stoics understood stillness at a deeper level than this. They were pointing at something that is not a technique at all, but a fundamental orientation toward life itself. The Greek word for this orientation is ataraxia. It means roughly tranquility, but not the tranquility of someone who has removed themselves from the difficulties of life, the tranquility of someone who has learned to remain anchored in themselves regardless of what the difficulties of life bring. This is the difference between stillness as a practice and stillness as a state. A practice is something you have to remember to do. A state is what you are, even when you are in motion, even when you are acting decisively, even when the world around you is in chaos. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire for nearly 2 decades while practicing this state of interior stillness. He did not withdraw from the world to find peace. He remained in the most demanding position in the world, and carried his peace with him as an interior condition that the world could pressure but not penetrate. How did he do this? He did it through the relentless, daily, disciplined practice of returning to a single question. Is this within my control? Not everything. Not most things. Just this thing. Right now, is it within my power or not? If yes, he engaged fully, brought all his skill and judgment to bear, and acted. If no, he released it. Not reluctantly, not with a sense of defeat, with the genuine equanimity of a person who understood that fighting reality is the most exhausting and pointless activity available to a human being. This is the ultimate expression of Stoic stillness, not the absence of action, but the absence of unnecessary resistance, not the cessation of effort, but the elimination of wasted effort, not peace through withdrawal, but peace through alignment with what is actually within your power, with what your deepest values actually require, with the reality that is actually in front of you. The world will continue to be loud. It will continue to demand your attention, your reaction, your compliance with its pace. That will not change. What can change, what the Stoics dedicated their lives to changing, is your relationship to that noise, your capacity to remain at your center, still, not unmoved. The Stoics were not advocates of emotional flatness, but unshaken, rooted, anchored in the interior space that no external event can colonize without your permission. That interior space is what you are cultivating every time you pause before reacting, every time you sit in silence when the impulse is to fill it, every time you choose to wait when everything in you wants to force, every time you release your grip on an outcome and trust your own effort, rather than demanding a specific result. You are not just managing yourself better. You are building the most important thing a human being can build, a self that is not at the mercy of everything happening around it, a mind that cannot be invaded without consent, a life that is genuinely fundamentally yours. That is the power of doing nothing. And it is, in the end, the greatest power there is. If what we have explored today speaks to something in you, if you recognize that this kind of inner architecture is what you have been building toward, then the Master Your Mind program was created for exactly this work. Inside, you will find a complete, structured system for building emotional sovereignty, Stoic discipline, and the kind of mental stillness that transforms not just how you perform but who you are. Everything in this video, the philosophy, the practices, the framework, is developed there in full, with the depth and consistency that real transformation requires. You will find the link in the description. If you are ready, it is there. And if this message found you at the right moment, if it gave you something real to carry with you, subscribe to the channel and stay committed to this path. Every day on Master Your Mind, we bring you the ancient wisdom that builds stronger, wiser, more unshakable human beings. This is not passive viewing, this is training. I will see you in the next video.